Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for our Game Week 28 final decisions video where we're going to be looking through all of the press conferences and injury news for this game week, as well as looking at an updated Game Week 28 wildcard, looking at some updated fixture projections and much more. Guys, if you enjoyed this one, make sure you drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. So, as always, we're going to start off with the press conferences going through in alphabetical order, starting with Arsenal, because I've had a lot of questions this game week about Saka and his new Dorito of death that has appeared next to his name on the fantasy football website / app. And it obviously always scares people, and I will say the same thing as I always say. Do not trust the fantasy football website for updates on injuries and suspensions. Maybe suspensions a little bit, but injuries and stuff like that. It's just no good. It really isn't good because Saka played in Game Week 27. He was taken off at half-time because he was feeling a bit sick, because Arsenal were up by so many goals. It was like, yeah, it's fine. Saka, if you're feeling a little bit sick, we'll take you off. That doesn't mean that a week later he is going to be unavailable. So despite being flagged in FPL, there is no real concern here. Arteta is expecting Saka to return to the team for Game Week 28. No big deal, no panic needed. Saka is probably going to be absolutely fine. He was feeling sick on Monday. Guys, if you feel sick on Monday, how do you feel the following weekend? Usually fine. Particularly if you're not so sick that you can't even play a half of game of football, you know. Martinelli also had a small cut, but that's not going to keep him out. And Raya is ineligible to play versus his parent club Brentford this game week. So just something to be aware of if you are a Raya owner. For Aston Villa, Pau Torres, his Conference League half-time substitution was planned, so there's no injury there. He's just being phased back into this Aston Villa team, so there's no real concern on his injury. He's going to be fine going forward. It's just about managing his minutes a little bit. Diego Carlos also is back and available after returning in the Conference League, and Konsa is suspended in the Conference League, which means he's probably going to get a decent amount of minutes of this game week in Game Week 28, which could be bad for cash if you still have him. That's not injury news necessarily, but just wanted to throw that one out there. Maybe Cash's expected minutes have reduced a little bit this game week. For Bournemouth, yes, we've finally got the confirmation that Senesi is going to be out until Game Week 30. We probably had a decent idea about this already, but yeah, it's now confirmed. So if you have Senesi, do not expect him to play any minutes at all during Game Week 28. He was a double Game Week player. He is no longer. Solanke, however, few concerns about him because he has not been in full training this game week, but it seems that maybe Iraola is managing Solanke a little bit, managing his workload. He's played a lot of minutes this season. Apparently, he's been training non-stop throughout this season as well. And actually, since he's playing 2 games this game week, he has been managed a little bit in his training to make sure his body is ready to go for these 2 fixtures in Game Week 28. So I know a lot of people will be very concerned about Solanke not being in full training, but I do believe that it seems like his workload is just being managed. We've seen this with players plenty of times in the past. This is not new. This is not abnormal. This is something that has to happen when a player is carrying a long-term issue, which Solanke has been doing for months and months and months and still been doing fine during that period. Adams could make the bench versus Sheffield United, which is pretty interesting, but maybe improves Bournemouth's defensive abilities if he can play maybe in that second fixture. For Brentford, no good news here. Pinnock is expected back in Game Week 30, as is Mbermo. Me and Hickey are out long term. There's no new players coming back from injury for Brentford. Just the injuries remain as they are for the time being. For Brighton, though, a few people concerned about Gross not starting in Game Week 27. Well, he played 90 minutes in Europe, so hopefully that is enough confidence to, let you know that Pascal Gross is absolutely fine. He's going to be fine to play this game week, so not a player that you need to sell or anything like that. Estupinian was also rested in the midweek, and considering Tariq Lamptey played 90 minutes, I wonder if Estupinian could be back in the Brighton squad, ready to start a game in Game Week 28. I think his chances of minutes have improved slightly, but still, you never know. For Stupinian, Gilmore is going to be suspended for Game Week 28 as well, which moves us on to Burnley. With Brownhill, he's going to return following suspension. Bayer is apparently progressing well, but Vincent Kompany seems to say this every single game week, and there's no other injury returnees. Kompany is not really too good in these press conferences for giving us injury updates, so I can't really give you too much there. For Chelsea, Colwill and Chilwell have both picked up new injuries, so a real concern there as Chelsea's depth seems to dwindle a little bit more. more. Gallagher was also missing from training this week due to illness, so maybe some question marks around him, and there's been no new injury returnees either. So yeah, just to be aware that yeah, Chelsea's injury situation is maybe building up a little bit at the moment. For Crystal Palace, Eze is ready for more game time apparently, so that's good news for him. He played, what, 65 minutes in game week 27, might be ready for 75, 80 in game week 28 against Luton Town, so nice little differential there, Eze. As for Schlupp, he is still going to be unavailable despite having trained, and Gahey, Elise, Decore and Holding are all still out a little bit more long term. For Everton, Gay is unlikely to play, but he does have a chance apparently, and Danjuma could be back in for game week 30. There's still no return date for Dele Alli, however. For Fulham, Palhinha is going to return following suspension, so a huge boost in the defensive capabilities for Fulham. Jimenez is also expected back in game week 29, but game week 28 is going to be a little bit too soon for him, so Muniz, the fun with Muniz will continue, I imagine. For Liverpool, Salah is back after a bench appearance in the Europa League, so anyone worried about Salah being out long term? Well, not going to happen. Salah's back, and he should be starting against Man City. Konate, however, may have picked up an injury during that game, so small concerns there. I don't think there's any other players that have picked up injuries, however, so just Konate picking up that injury. No other concerns, or no other new concerns anyway. Trent, Jota, Alisson, these guys are still going to be out as well as a whole bunch of other players at Liverpool. For Luton, Amari Bell, he's going to be out for a lengthy amount of time after being rushed back in game week 27, so bad news there. Osho could be back, however. Adebayo and Lokonga are still out long term, as are many other of Luton's players out, having been out for a long time, will continue to be out. So yeah, lots of injury problems at Luton still. For Man City, Foden, KDB and Walker were all on the bench in the Champions League game against Copenhagen, all with a nice rest there. So good news if you own these players, that they'll be very likely to get a decent amount of minutes come game week 28 against Liverpool. It's going to be a tough one, so they're going to need these players at full fitness. Doku and Nunes will be assessed, and Grealish is still out. For Manchester United, Rashford has been declared fit after a game week 27 injury scare. Forson is out with an injury, and Højlund isn't expected back until after this game week. Højlund actually could be back for the FA Cup game next week, but he's not going to be available in FPL until game week 30 for Højlund. But still, he is, it's on the horizon, his return. But with Forson and Højlund still out for game week 28, it looks like Rashford probably going to be playing as a striker for game week 28. For Newcastle, Trippier, he is unlikely to be playing before game week 30. He has got an injury. It's not a serious injury, but it is going to at least, take him out of action until after the international break. It's not guaranteed he's going to be back in game week 30, but it's looking likely. Target has also been back and in first team training, and Pope is expected back in April. That is the latest update on Pope. So if you are a Dubravka owner, we could see Pope back in 4 or 5 game weeks. I think that's pretty realistic. With a shoulder injury, he will be managed a little bit, and they are taking their time with this. But April is the new target. For Nottingham Forest, Wood, Bolly, Aina are all back in training. Dominguez has apparently recovered well. I'm not really sure what that means, but Tavares is still out. For Sheffield United, Brereton Diaz will be back for game week 28. Apparently, he was kind of touch and go to play against Arsenal in game week 27, but he's going to be raring to go for game week 28. Holgate, however, is still suspended, and Archer is not expected back until game week 30. For Spurs, Pedro Porro is available, having trained all week, so good news for those of you guys who have held on to Pedro Porro, especially if you're looking for a Spurs defender to play in game week 29. Well, Pedro Porro should be more than ready to go by game week 29, so good news there. Richarlison, however, is still out. Ange Postecoglou gave a very, very lengthy talk about Richarlison and his situation with kind of him wanting to declare himself available for Brazil, but apparently it's touch and go whether Richarlison is even going to be available for the Brazil squad, so that probably puts him out for game week 28 and game week 29 as well. There are no other injury returnees for Spurs, just Pedro Porro. For West Ham, Emerson, he is going to be assessed after a midweek injury. Bad news there. And Aguerd is apparently also a question mark, so a couple of West Ham defensive players missing there. Cornet is still out, as he has been for a few weeks now. For Wolves, Neto, Sa have trained. They are available after some scares in game week 27. Dawson has a potential groin issue, however, so bad news if you are a Dawson owner. And for Hecham, he has been ruled out for 6 weeks. That's going to take us through to game week 33, 34, somewhere around there. So yeah, a player that you probably want to look at selling. So those are the press conferences rounded up. Let's have a look at some of the most common questions you guys are asking this game week. So first of all, let's cover some Bournemouth and Luton players. I'm going to put on screen for you guys my favourite ones for this game week. And yeah, here they are. For Bournemouth, it is all about Solanke, Neto, Zabani, maybe Semenyo at a push. These are, in my opinion, going to be the 4 best options to go for. I wanted to give a shout out to Kirkes as well. I think Kirkes is possibly a better short-term option than Zabani. The problem is Kirkes is probably going to be, you know, fall out of favour in the Bournemouth team if you're looking for someone long-term. So if you're planning on wildcarding very, very soon, maybe in game week 30 or 31, then Kirkes is probably the guy to go for. If you're looking for something a little bit more long-term, Zabani is going to be your option there. Semenyo, I think, is obviously going to be a decent pick. A lot of the models are predicting him with some pretty decent points this week. But outside of that, for Bournemouth, I know you guys are going to be asking about the likes of Tavernier and Cliver. The numbers are just not there. These are players who are rotation risk as well, and I just don't think I would like to go there personally. Anyone outside of these 4 for Bournemouth is going to be a big differential. That's not necessarily a good thing, because they are just players that are just putting up really, really poor numbers at the moment, despite some of them having returned a little bit here and there. Yeah, would not really look past these 4 players, to be honest. You're taking too much of a chance, and really it's such a punt that I wouldn't really be expecting anything outside of these guys. And you could say a similar thing about Luton. There are 4, probably 3 to be honest, main picks. The 3 main picks from Luton are Morris, Doughty, and Barkley at a push. Morris and Doughty by far the top best players to go from Luton. So those 2 would be my priorities. Morris, 90-minute man on penalties and the best goal-scoring threat in that Luton Town team. Doughty putting up some really nice attacking numbers despite being listed as a defender. And that's the only reason you would go for Doughty, because unfortunately Luton are so poor defensively. They are going to concede goals, and unless you can pick up a defender with attacking threat, there really is no point whatsoever in going for them. But Doughty definitely has set pieces, creativity, crosses, all that stuff that is very, very good in an attacking wing back. Now, if you're going for a midfielder, Barkley has shown maybe some consistency with attacking numbers. Last few game weeks haven't quite been there for attacking numbers, to be honest. So, I mean, he is probably as far as I would go. Maybe some people asking about Tahith Chong, potentially, who has started the last 3 games, but has only played around 60 minutes in each of these games, 60 to 70 minutes in each of these games. So, yeah, Chong is going to be rotation risk in a double game week, and although he has scored, a couple of, FPL returns recently, his numbers are not that great. Chong's aren't. And Barkley, although his numbers are even worse recently, at least previously we saw some decent stuff from him, and we know Barkley is nailed on in this Luton Town team at least. So yeah, I'm not sure if I would honestly go outside of Morris and Doughty. I'd say those are the 2 priority players. Barkley is a bit of a luxury pick. Kaminsky might work for some of you, depending on what kind of goalkeeper rotations you're going for. If you're looking for a goalkeeper for just the next 2 game weeks only, then Kaminsky covers you for game week 28's double and has a fixture in 29 as well. So fixtures would be the only reason I would go for Kaminsky, but again, wouldn't expect too much from him. Clean sheets are going to be very, very difficult to come by from your Luton Town player. So really, Morris, Doughty is the only players I feel strongly about that are good picks for this game week from Luton. Outside of that, they're pretty much all punts. They really, really are. Certainly would not be looking outside of these 4 pretty much at all. I wanted to give you guys a update on my projected fixtures for game week 28 to 38, and you will notice that this hasn't really changed. I've seen a few people with some concerns about maybe things changing a little bit, maybe things have drifted a little bit in terms of trying to predict the most likely outcome for the fixtures between now and the end of the season. And not all of these are guaranteed. Some of these double game weeks are more likely than others. Some blanks are more likely than others, but this is what I think roughly we're going to be looking at between now and the end of the season. So guys, we are looking at a game week 34 double game weeks for Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Everton, Man United, Newcastle and Sheffield United. Still, all of these teams have very, very decent chances of doubling in game week 34, which is particularly interesting for Bournemouth, because if you want to pick up Bournemouth players this game week, particularly if you are free hitting in 29, well, that's going to be great because you can have double game week players now and also double game week players in 34. So Bournemouth could do the double-double over this next period of fixtures, which is very nice indeed. So those people kind of worried about going overloading on Bournemouth players, well, I wouldn't worry too much because, you know, now is not the only advantage that you could get from them. We have future prospects for them as well. A lot of people saying, you know, Bournemouth players, these are not players you really want to own long term. You're bringing them in for one game week only. Well, you're not. If they double in 34, then you're going to have a huge advantage if you are doubled or tripled up on Bournemouth. So that's looking pretty good there. You can probably see from game week 34, outside of Manchester United and Newcastle maybe, there's not too much going on. The doubles look okay, but, you know, nothing amazing here. It's a double game week you could probably pass by without doing too much damage to your team, so just be aware of that one. We are going to have a double for Spurs or Chelsea, probably in game week 35 or 36. A lot of this stuff is FA Cup result dependent, but 35 and 36 look like the most likely candidates for Chelsea and Spurs to double up. And finally, game week 37, that's the big one. We're now looking at Arsenal doubling there, Brighton doubling there, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, and Spurs. They're the kind of the big headline teams likely to double in game week 37, so a huge opportunity for a bench boost. And yeah, if you can hold your wild card for long enough to set up for a bench boost in 37, we could be looking at a very, very nice score indeed. So yes, that is looking brilliant. That is what my projections are right now. No change from last game week, and we'll continue to update this week by week. If you're thinking about wildcarding, yeah, this could be the week. We'll say a similar thing that we said last game week. If you are in a certain situation whereby a lot of things are not kind of working perfectly for you at the moment, then you might want a wildcard. So, guys, read through this, listen through this. If this sounds like you, then it might be time for you to wildcard. So, first of all, if you have less than 5 players available for game week 29, so players from Villa, Brentford, Burnley, Fulham, Luton, Forest, Spurs, and West Ham. If you've got less than 5 players already for that game week, then it might be time to wildcard. If you have 6, maybe, or maybe you have, you know, 5 or 6, you could potentially take a hit or 2 over the next couple of game weeks in order to set yourself up better for game week 29. But if you're looking at, like, you look at your team, you've got like 1, 2, 3 players who are playing in game week 29. Well, you've got 2 choices. You either wildcard now or you free hit next game week. I wouldn't look to wildcard next game week. I know a lot of people will wildcard out of panic next game week, but wildcarding now allows you to take full advantage of Luton and Bournemouth this game week, as well as covering yourself for next game week as well. If you only have one decent and available player from Bournemouth and Luton, you know, these double game week 28 teams, that is going to be another reason to wildcard now. So say you only have Solanke or you only have Morris, this is not a great situation. I don't care if you have like a Solanke and a Kabore, or, you know, a Solanke and a Senesi. That doesn't count. That just counts as one player because, you know, Kabore, we're not expecting any points from him, for example. Senesi is injured. So I'm talking about decent players. You know, if you only have one decent player for this game week, so if you only have one of, you know, Solanke, Doughty, Morris, those kind of guys, Neto maybe, then you might be in trouble for this game week because you do want to have 2 or 3 decent double game week players this week, I would say. So if you don't, maybe wildcarding now is going to be able to help you resolve that situation. If you have a few injured or doubtful players in your team, that's going to be another strong reason to wildcard. If you've still got, you know, Hwang Hee-chan, if you've got Trippier who's picked up an injury this game week, if you've got Senesi and you just want a wildcard to sort out your team, good reasons to potentially wildcard. And if you have a few players in your team that you just want to sell anyway, if you've got a Purpose of Stupinian in your team, for example, you want to sell him anyway, you've been waiting for an excuse, maybe your goalkeeper situation is not looking too hot at the moment, then maybe a wildcard can help you out there. Now, if you fit into all this criteria, that's not to say that you need to wildcard. If you think you can resolve this situation with 1 or 2 hits, then that's probably a better idea than using a wildcard. Particularly if you have a free hit available for game week 29, you might not need to wildcard and you might be able to solve the situation with a hit or 2. If you can, do that. But if you're just in trouble at the moment, you would rather save your free hit for later on in the season, perhaps, a wildcard now could save your bacon. So what might that game week 28 wildcard look like? Well, it would look like a team with a lot of money in the bank. And I think that's a real key here for those of you who are thinking about wildcarding this week. Leave money in the bank because you're going to need to upgrade to the likes of Haaland and Salah later on in the season. From game week 30 onwards, we're going to want the likes of these big hitting players back into our FPL teams as soon as possible. And you're going to need to have money in the bank ready to do that. But this team, it looks pretty good. Let's just read it out for you guys. So in goal, we've got Neto. In defense, we've got Zabani, Doughty, and Gabriel. In midfield, we've got Son, Bowen, Bailey, and Saka. And up front, Solanke, Morris, and Ollie Watkins. On the bench, we've got Areola, Madison, Udogie, and Reguilon. This gives us 5 double game week 28 players. It gives us 10 blank game week 29 players before any transfers, and it gives us a Fantasy Football Hub team rating of 88%, and it's not going to be much higher than that because we don't have the likes of Salah and Haaland. The rating is always going to be a little bit lower. You expect that when you're not spending your whole budget. So with this team, guys, I'm not going to go through all of it in this video. If you want to look at my wildcard video, I uploaded that on Sunday, and we spoke about some potential moves you can make to fix your team from game week 30 onwards to make everything look a little more normal. But in general, guys, we would be looking to upgrade Morris up to a Haaland. You'd be looking to potentially move on a Bowen to a Salah. Those kind of moves there would what you would probably be thinking of doing, as well as maybe a few others. The defense in this team doesn't look brilliant, but in general, I wouldn't worry about it, guys, because your defenders aren't scoring points anyway. As long as you've got at least one Arsenal defender, the other two are always going to be bums in your FPL defense anyway. That's just how things seem to work at the moment. So as long as you can fix the attack, and I think you can, just by adding, you know, Haaland, Salah, maybe a Gordon, for example, at Newcastle as well, someone like that. This could be very, very nice. Cole Palmer would be nice to get back in as well. But you can do all of that. Might take you, you know, if you can save your transfer in game week 29, you can have 2 free transfers. Maybe take a hit as well between game week 30 and 31. That's going to give you, you know, 4 transfers to use to fix your team. And that's going to be plenty to get all of the key players back into your team ready to go, as well as allowing you to take full advantage of 28 and 29 without the use of your free hit chip. It works, guys. It works. A lot of people will complain and say it doesn't work. Go and figure out for yourself. Honestly, go and look at the potential transfer moves, the chain of transfers you can make to fix your team after this period. It does work. It's not perfect, but no strategy is. But yeah, do not let the naysayers take you down, because there's a lot of them out there. Kind of people kind of really don't like the idea of a wild card. It's not going to be for everyone. It is going to be for some people, though. Okay, with Solanke, we've got kind of this question mark around Solanke and him not training this week. I personally still think he will be fine for this game. Like, I think he'll play both games. There might be a little bit of minutes management, but he should still start both games in double game week 28. But if you are feeling that you don't want to use your triple captain, say you have your triple captain, and you feel like you don't want to use it on Solanke anymore, maybe you've got cold feet, getting a bit nervous, I wanted to throw out here a couple of other suggestions for potential game weeks for you to use that triple captain on, if you haven't already used it on Erling Haaland in game week 25, of course. So, in game week 35, first of all, I mean, game week 34, I think is pretty much devoid of triple captain options as things stand, but game week 35 and 36 do give potential for Son and Palmer to have double game weeks. You know, these two players, they're the big hitters from their respective teams, and we could think about triple captaining them. In game week 35, for Son, it would be Arsenal and Chelsea, and for Palmer, it will be Aston Villa and Spurs. These aren't amazing fixtures, but they're okay. For game week 36, it will be Son against Liverpool and Chelsea. Again, not ideal, but Palmer versus West Ham and Spurs, that doesn't look too bad. You know, if you are comparing Solanke, a not fully fit Solanke against Sheffield United and Luton, to a Palmer versus West Ham and Spurs in game week 36, if that turns out to be true, then hey, that doesn't look so bad. A good thing to also note is that Son, he's a big game player. He does well against the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool. So even though they are tough fixtures on paper, you know, he could work out, and he's a player who's done very well against any, you know, he's a premium player, which Solanke is not. He's a player who has got huge scores in the past and will get huge scores in the future. So I do think it's genuinely worth having a look at the likes of Son and Palmer in 35 and 36. Of course, in 37, many of us are planning a bench boost. However, if you are not, there are going to be some opportunities here as well. So Haaland is projected to have fixtures against Fulham and Spurs. Salah is projected against Aston Villa and Fulham. And Son, again, I like this quite a lot. Burnley at home, that's a fixture that suits him. And Man City, Son loves playing against Man City as well. So again, another great opportunity there as well if you are not bench boosting in 37. So those of you guys who still have your triple captain chip, yes, you will probably be thinking, yeah, I need to triple captain Solanke this week. Well, I don't think you do. There are other options. Have a look at them. If you prefer these other options, then maybe you can go for one of them instead of this game week. But if you like this game week, that's fine too. Speaking of captains, our captain options are pretty limited this game week. Solanke and Morris are by far the top two captain options for this game week with their double game weeks. They're the standout players for their teams. They are on penalties and they have decent double game weeks. So it's really a no-brainer probably to go for Solanke, but maybe Morris comes into that conversation a little bit as well. Outside of that, I don't think I'd be looking at any of the double game week players. Maybe, what, are you going to triple captain? You know, not triple captain. Are you going to captain like Neto from Bournemouth or something like that? I don't know. I can't really see it personally. But if you are feeling brave and you want to go for a single game week triple captain, well, Haaland is always going to be on the menu. Ollie Watkins at home against Spurs is a great opportunity for a player in form. And Saka is always a very, very nice option at the moment as well, with some high scores from him recently. So if you're feeling brave, Haaland, Watkins, Saka, they're going to be the kind of players you go for. But I hope that most of you guys have a Solanke or a Morris in your team already, and you can simply put your captain's armband on one of them. And finally, let's quickly go over the goalkeeper start order. Neto and Kaminsky are obviously the two best goalkeepers to go for. If you've got Ramsdale in your team for some reason, then maybe you could throw him into your starting 11. Areola doesn't look too bad this week either, with a home game against Burnley. And Onana, Leno and Sa would complete kind of the top goalkeepers, I would say, for this game week. All of the others you would ideally like to bench, I think. But yeah, those are the goalkeepers. That is the order in which I would start them. You know, whichever two you have, start them in that order. Of course, we'll be doing a full bench list on tomorrow's deadline stream, where we'll be going through all positions and whether you should start or bench your various players in your team. Thanks so much for watching today's video, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you are new around here. Massively appreciate all the support you guys are showing at the moment. Don't forget, there are plenty of other Game Week 28 videos for you to check out. We've done loads. I did my team selection video. We did a great 100 experts video as well this week, as well as a wildcard draft that we've spoken about a little bit before, and a wildcard strategy for Game Week 28. But aside from that, if I don't see you on those other videos, I'll see you tomorrow on our deadline stream for Game Week 28, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.